So, how much force can you really use in your defense? Now, that question comes up a lot. It comes up a lot in a lot of forums, in some comments on this channel, especially from folks outside of the U.S. There's this there's this notion of fairness. There's a notion of fairness in use of force. And you also find it in the articles of war that nations do, and that is their response should be proportional to the force used against you. Um, that does not and cannot apply to you and I, to individuals. And let me explain why. Now let's come back to a definition on the use of deadly force in your defense. And that is when there is an unavoidable, imminent threat, threat of serious bodily injury or death to you or an innocent. Now, that definition would apply almost universally, but only in the United States. Only in the United States. Because there is no concept of proportional response. Now, let me give you an example of what proportional response is. Even though there is a threat of imminent death to you, if the person is not using a weapon, then you cannot use a weapon to stop that. That's the concept of proportional force. Well, what does that become? It becomes a fist fight. It becomes a fight of the strongest against the weakest. That's the consequence of that kind of thinking. But in a lot of places, and even in some jurisdictions in the United States, that's a concept that they will apply or try to apply. There are some naive citizens of this country, of the U.S., who believe that the use of violence should be proportional. That is an argument for a fist fight. That is an argument for a mixed martial arts encounter in your defense. My response to that is bullshit, because that clearly is the strongest against the weakest, right? And that's not how it works. You get to use the force necessary to stop the threat, right? The force necessary to stop the threat, which has nothing to do with proportionality. It has everything to do with imminent, unavoidable threat of serious bodily injury or death to you. However, that's going to be delivered to you. I mean, in the U.S., the FBI latest 2020 homicide statistics, and this has been put out there in many different channels, there are more homicides by the use of hands, fists, and feet than there have been by guns. Homicides. And so you have to look at that and go, So if you use the proportional response and you don't really know how strong the other person is, you don't know their skills or anything other than size, right? You either have to take a beat down and then decide how bad are you being hurt, or guess. So you see what I'm saying? However, the use of deadly force says, if you believe there is the threat of imminent bodily injury or death, you get to stop the threat with whatever force you have that you believe can do that. And that is, if you believe it's deadly force coming to you, you get to use deadly force. I mean, that's as simple as that. Now, caution. Anything else, you personally are getting ready to engage in the monkey dance. You're getting ready to engage in chest bumping with somebody over some stupid stuff, right? Which all that does is escalate, especially when alcohol and drugs or your girlfriend or your wife is involved, right? Because now you're trying to defend somebody's honor and all that kind of honor has nothing to do with the use of force. So let me come back to that. Anything short of the threat of imminent bodily injury or death to you or an innocent, you need to find an exit and get out of there if you can. If you cannot, the situation is now escalated to the threat of serious bodily injury or death to you or an innocent. You understand what I'm saying? Now, that concept that proportionality does not apply to the use of deadly force is an American it's an American concept. Outside of the United States, where other empires, monarchies have had their empires. I'm going to pick on the British Empire as an example. Everywhere that the Union Jack has flown says, one, you cannot use deadly force unless it's proportional. The other person has to have a gun, then you can have a gun. The other person has a knife, you can have a knife. If they don't have a weapon, you can't use a weapon, because then you commit the crime of using an offensive weapon. Anything in your hand is not a defensive tool. When you look at the law applied to anyone in any country, that's Canada, the Caribbean, all of Europe, all of the United Kingdom, and other places where the British had their empire. That's just the way their law looks at it, right? So I'm gonna come back to this concept that is uniquely American. In America, we get to actually defend our lives with the force necessary to protect our lives. We actually get to do that, which is the reason, and that's the self-defense component of the Second Amendment, by the way. We actually get to use the great equalizer. And the great equalizer was not a lever-action rifle. The great equalizer was the handgun. We get to use that tool to defend ourselves as individuals. So think about that. I have been for a few days now, because I keep seeing that theme come up. In writings and in opinion pieces from all kinds of different liberal, of course, forums. So if you have a different thought, or if you believe that is inappropriate, and oh, by the way, there are people in this country who believe that the response should be proportional. I think those people are naive and stupid, because that means that it's okay with them to be at a disadvantage when they're under threat like that. Now, sadly enough, I've asked the question about the use of violence in protection of themselves to women, and I think men who do domestic violence on a female should receive the death penalty. But I'm not king of the world, but that lets you know how I feel about that. But there are women who have told me that even if they had a gun on them and they were being raped, they would not use it in their defense because they didn't want to kill somebody, because rape won't kill them. Now, I, I'm a male. I don't understand that. I don't understand that from a male female point of view, and I don't understand that just philosophically. But I have had that said to me, and it just stops me. I can't, I can't have conversation about that anymore with that person. I don't I don't I don't challenge them, but I don't understand. So I have to go. I can't get it. I can't continue that conversation. So um, as I sit here watching the sun come up, having my coffee in my urban assault vehicle, those are my thoughts for this Saturday morning. Please let me know what your thoughts are. If you like the content of the channel, of course, you know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell icon to make sure you get all the notifications. And as always, thanks for watching and carry on.